Boxing Weekly on the the Old Time Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I got my boxing shows mixed up. You can see me and John responding on Inside Boxing Weekly tomorrow at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. But today, Old Time Boxing Show, we're looking back at the career of merciless Ray Mercer. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my co-host, our boxing historian at the Grueling Truth, Christopher Shelton. How you doing, Christopher?
Good. Should be a good show. The one time the United States best athlete at age 27, a sergeant in the Army who is also charged with a crime in the boxing ring. So it should be an interesting show.
Yeah, and Ray Mercer was interesting to say the least. And the way he got his start was interesting. He got a late start compared to most people, and that was in the U.S. military, in the Army, Chris.
Yeah, and again, the United States best athlete, period, regardless of sports or your gender or anything else. He was number one. They pick one every year, and they picked him. And the way he performed in the Olympics in 1988 was spectacular, and made him popular with Americans right off the bat. And the finale is final amateur bout, a first round KO. That's the way to go.
Yeah, and when we look at him, I mean, he was a guy who gave Felix Savone, the great Cuban, he gave him trouble, knocked him down once or twice, beat Zyko Mavrovic, who fought for the heavyweight title a few years later against Lennox Lewis. When you get to the Olympic trials, he beat a guy who may be his most famous win as a pro with Tommy Morrison, who he defeated in the Olympic trials. Then he beat Michael Bent twice to go. Michael Bent was a guy who he just beat 3-2 by a split decision to make the U.S. Olympic team. Bent was a good fighter.
And that's probably Bent's also a good boxer. And that would be maybe a little bit of Mercer's problems. He really wanted to slug it out, and boxers could give him a little more problems.
Yeah, and when we look at the Olympics, nobody really gave him any problems. 4 straight knockouts. We're going to look at merciless Ray Mercer winning the gold medal 1988 in Seoul, the same Olympics that Roy Jones, didn't get the best of decisions in.
And I like the way you mentioned Felix Savon too, because Cuba's best heavyweight and such like that. Because that one of the things you learn about Ray Mercer is we can't think we kind of think everybody thinks like us, and they don't. But one thing Mercer did is when it was somebody big, somebody really, really strong and popular, he really got geared up. So Felix Savon would really have Mercer geared up to an extra level. And sometimes he took other people a little less, a little bit more lightly. And that could be good and bad for him in the future.
Yeah, and you talk about the future, it definitely happened like that in the pros with him. But when you look at the 88 Seoul Olympics, there was a lot of questionable decisions in there. So Ray Mercer did it the best way possible. He didn't leave it up to the judges.
No, and this is just this is what can make boxing popular to have this as the heavyweight finals and first round, and this American sergeant in the Army is pounding away, and it's exciting. That's exactly what boxing really likes. Boxing likes hard punchers and knockouts. We love the boxing part, but the reality is knockouts is what bring in the fans.
Yeah, and when you watch Mercer here, I mean, the one thing is surprising, he's taking on a Korean in the heavyweight division. You don't see that very often.
Yeah, the South Koreans put together some pretty good boxing players. When we did our 84 versus 76 show, I was surprised how many of the Korean boxers were at least, formidable and stuff like that. They never quite seem to win to the finals and stuff like that, but they seem to be around and formidable itself. They're a nation that do put together a good boxing program, just maybe not quite at the level of Cuba or America or Russia.
Now, let me ask you this. When you watched this at the time, back in 1988, were you a guy that thought that merciless Ray Mercer, this would basically transition to the pros? Because we see a lot of times where it doesn't transition for guys.
Yeah, I would say that, but I would probably say that at the heavyweight level was getting a little bit dull. Larry Holmes, being champion for so many years, and Michael Spinks finally taking him out. So maybe it was kind of exciting, the idea of somebody else coming around, and Tyson, of course, would be the big one. And Holyfield, we didn't quite know was going to be a heavyweight yet and such. So I'm sure Mercer was exciting in the midst of is boxing going to have a new sort of evolutionary era.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt that you have an Olympic gold medalist who was in the United States Army.
Oh, no, not at all. And a sergeant, he gave orders. And one thing for sure, he said, you take on fears. And Mercer loved to take on fears. Mercer loved the idea of not being afraid of something. And again, this is the first round, knocks him down with these, the gloves and the equipment and stuff. It's not easy to knock people down to win. And Mercer, look at that, first round knockout, and that's exciting. And you think, wow, I wonder what this guy could do in the pros.
Yeah, and he was a solid pro, better than a solid pro. I mean, he fought some of the best. Lewis, Holyfield, gave him all trouble, beat him Tommy Morrison. We're going to talk a little bit more about his career here. And when he started out in 88, 89, when you look at the start of his career, what's the thing that really stands out to you?
I think the thing is, again, not quite understanding the personality of Ray Mercer. So what we're doing is just boxing the bouts itself. So when he fought something like Burt Cooper, knocked him down the first round, and 10 rounds just slugging it out, that was a great fight, and not quite realizing that's what really gets Mercer turned up. So when he fought something like Ocasio, who I know I've been mean to sometimes, because he's a really good boxer, but he runs around, and Mercer doesn't like that. And I'm not sure I want Mercer to lose his undefeated record to somebody like Ocasio, unless Ocasio was really landing punches. And fortunately, I thought they gave the decision to Mercer.
Well, and the thing about that is this. You had around the Ocasio, you had 3 straight fights, and this was probably about 12 fights into his career, where he wins a unanimous decision over Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is a guy that was tough. We talked about Michael Bent. Michael Bent actually turned pro and lost his pro debut to Jerry Jones. And it was the last time he would lose until he lost to Herbie Hyde when he was defending the title he took from Tommy Morrison with that upset. And then he gets to fight against Ocasio, which was on the Duran Leonard 3 undercard. And then he fought Wesley Watson, who was a guy that I believe he was in the Army with.
Mercer, again, what Mercer really feels himself sort of is that, heavyweight boxing is about power and his jab, and that he can take a punch, and that this boxing stuff is sort of, gets in the way of things in a sense, because in a way, and Ocasio was giving Mercer room to learn, and Mercer wasn't really learning. He just learned that he's winning, and as long as he's winning, it's all working out. So that ultimately be a problem. Though again, Mercer's power you really had to. We talked about forming. Anybody else doesn't sound as strong, but Mercer really is about power itself and the jab, and it's not being fearful in the ring, and that's easier said than done. Tommy Morrison told me, it's just it's easy to say don't be afraid in the ring, and Foreman said I've been afraid in the ring. Mercer really came across as somebody who really wasn't afraid, and in fact, he'd get bored a little bit sometimes with some fighters, and really wanted the chance. He wanted to be afraid if he could be, because then he'd bring out his best.
Yeah, and then absolutely right after that, he fights Burt Cooper. He wins a decision where he dominates Burt Cooper, and then he fights for his first version of the WBO title, which was held by Francisco Damiani, who in 1984 was on the Italian Olympic boxing team. I think he medaled. I can't remember if it was gold or silver. Yeah, I think he lost to Tyrell Biggs in the gold medal match. But Damiani is a guy.
Biggs looked like he was going to be heavyweight champion of the world forever, and it didn't work out that way.
Yeah, and Damiani won his version of the heavyweight title by beating the legendary South African Johnny Duploy, which right there tells you this wasn't really a legit heavyweight championship belt, but it was an alphabet trinket. And Damiani was a class boxer. He was a classy boxer for a heavyweight. Didn't have a ton of power, but I mean, this is a guy. Damiani gave Mercer trouble through this entire fight. We're in the ninth round.
The first 8 rounds was leading the 9th round, and I think the only problem is the European style is a lot of head punches, which means Mercer's not hurt in any way, but he is losing all the rounds. He's going to need a knockout to win. And Damiani did show that he's a good boxer, but at the same time, undefeated Evander Holyfield, and you couldn't really think Evander Holyfield and Damiani were equals. Though I think Damiani won a lot of American respect by how well he boxed and dominated Mercer up to this point. I mean, he's won every single moment up to this point into the 9th round, and Mercer's going to need a knockout. And for Mercer, it's all going to work out, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, and we have Andre Rodriguez, who had a few comments here. Ray Mercer, Michael Bent, Burt Cooper, Herbie Hyde, Alex Stewart, Michael Cooper, Oliver McCall, Razor Murdoch, I think he means Ruddock. All these cats were tough son of a guns. Mercer was a particularly tough one. And then he throws in that I think Damiani and Brian Nielsen were very talented also. I don't know if I agree with the Brian Nielsen.
I think Nielsen was tough. I just don't think he was at the level of these other guys.
Yeah, I don't think he was talented.
I think he was a hard-working, good guy who tried. But, and I like that he and Evander Holyfield went out together. I liked that. That was very nice.
Well,
I mean, in the way they both ended their careers together.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, they
Intentionally.
fought each other, but
Yeah, to end it. They both knew that this is the end for both of us. And it was
Brian
kind of a family
Nielsen,
thing.
Brian Nielsen, did he ever fight outside of Denmark though?
Well, as I said, I just know that it was kind of a nice, even though Holyfield beat him up a little bit, it was a nice way for Holyfield to go out. Nielsen, it was nice they went out that way. So at this point, again, Mercer really has been dominated. Though what we don't expect is, as much as we respect Damiano's boxing, he doesn't like body punches, and that doesn't seem so unbelievably important until later because he hasn't hurt Mercer in any way. And the problem is Mercer is so strong in the 9th round, even though he's dominated, and Mercer doesn't realize that if he's facing a boxer who starts landing body punches, that could be a real problem. So right now all of a sudden, bam! I mean, it didn't even. It was so fast, I couldn't even quite see the punch. It was apparently Mercer looking at uppercut or something that landed his nose.
I could see it. It just
So
didn't
fast,
look to me like it. Maybe I don't know if we could really tell there if he landed it really hard.
It didn't seem like, but obviously it did. You know, nobody does that to somebody else, and again shows Mercer's power and just how fast it ended. And for Mercer, again, hey, it all worked out, and now he got this WBO thing that, you know, in retrospect, nobody quite views it as a championship thing, but you know, it's something that gives you something on your resume in taking on somebody else.
Yeah, and we talked about, you know, Tommy Morrison and Ray Mercer. Let's watch the knockout real quick. See,
There you
I
go. He
don't
did
know.
land it. It didn't seem like it a little bit, but he did land it.
Delayed reaction. I don't know.
Yeah, he landed. I just it wasn't apparent when we watched it live. It's a little bit easier in slow motion to me to see that this punch landed and Damian was in trouble. But Mercer really was behind and desperate, sort of, and it didn't clearly land by a lot. It looked like it clipped him, sort of.
I don't know, Chris. That looks
You think it might
questionable.
be a dive? I'm not sure. I can only see live.
How about
I can only see it live.
Maybe not a dive, but if you watch the fight, I think Damiani was running out of gas. And
that could be too. He
Yeah.
certainly was putting on an unbelievable, energetic boxing performance, an Olympic masterpiece, but this is the professional level.
Yeah. And then next up, you get maybe his most famous fight against Tommy Morrison, which one of the most devastating knockouts you'll ever see.
It's 2 undefeated, and Tommy Morrison, first 3 rounds, it's just like bombs on Mercer. It was amazing that Mercer could take these punches, although Mercer, immediately after the first round, he and his team decided Morrison was going to burn himself out and decided the second and third rounds to go ahead and take these punches and let Morrison burn himself out. Now, it wasn't apparent when we were watching it live. When we were watching it live, we're like, God damn, Tommy Morrison is really laying some bombs on Mercer, is what it looked like live.
Yeah, there's very few heavyweights.
He didn't have to train necessarily for this one. He wanted to get to Evander Holyfield so bad. He wanted to get to somebody who might kick his ass. He wanted to fight the best. Mercer loved competition, and eventually he's going to face somebody who we'll get to, who he didn't really think was going to be competition, and it turned out he was. He thought Tommy Morrison would be competition, and he listened to his corner. Let's just take his barrage and see if the guy burns himself out. And probably in the 4th round, Mercer had to get.
And the thing about that learning experience, it came against Larry Holmes, and I think when you look at this,
Mercer comes in heavier than any fight before.
Yeah, he was overconfident the way he was apt to be.
4-1, yeah.
And really, who could blame him though? I mean, nobody saw this coming from Larry Holmes, even though I think this. I had a buddy one time that said even if Larry Holmes was 100 years old and Ray Mercer was in his prime, Larry Holmes would still beat him just because the skill level was so different with these two guys that his point was he didn't know there was anything that could have been done by Mercer with the way he fought to win this fight.
Yeah, but Mercer's head just doesn't get ready for certain people, and for whatever reason, I even give this to Mike Tyson because I know sometimes we're mean to Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson was undefeated, had to face Larry Holmes. I think Mike Tyson gave Larry Holmes a certain amount of respect. I think Mike Tyson faced Larry Holmes, you know, and thought I better be prepared against this guy because this is one of the great ones. And after that, Ray Mercer fought Larry Holmes and really thought, I'm not sure I'm really facing Evander Holyfield type competition. I'm facing an old guy who complains a lot. He can't really take a punch. He can't hit. And it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, but it is with Holmes fought him just 2 years after the second Spinks fight. This is 5 years after that. So you
Yeah.
can kind of see, and Larry hadn't fought the greatest of competition getting there.
Oh,
He
Tyson
kinda,
knocked him out knocked him out 3 times, knocked him out in the 4th round.
yeah, but you know what? The thing about that fight is this: when you watch the first round or two, when Larry was still fresh,
Mm-hmm.
it still tells me Larry Holmes beats Mike Tyson in his prime because Larry Holmes was giving him trouble with that jab up until about late 2nd round, early 3rd round.
Well, and I also did think that Tyson was showing Holmes respect. I thought that Tyson
Oh yeah,
knew I'm facing somebody great, and I don't think Ray Mercer really felt that way. I think he really kind of felt on because they talked to each other back and forth, and Larry Holmes had a way of really annoying people. The whole crowd's for Ray Mercer going in, and Holmes for the first time started turning the crowd around. Holmes never really cared what the crowd thought or seemed to not care. They booed him sort of going in. But people respected the fact that he really is giving Mercer trouble, and you can see he's giving Mercer trouble. People respected that. I like the boxing crowd that when you go into anything sports, you're rooting for one team or rooting for one person. You rarely change your mind. And boxing, a lot of times, people will give a break and change their minds if they think the other person is just giving more heart.
Well, the other thing Mercer ran into is we talked about Mercer's chin. I don't think when prepared, there was ever a better chin in boxing than Larry Holmes. I mean, the dude could take a punch other than the Tyson thing, which was past his prime. I know it was before this, but this Larry Holmes was into fighting. The other Larry Holmes was in just making the $2 or $3 million. But if you watch this round, Ray Mercer hit him with the kitchen sink, and Larry just kind of looking at him like it's nothing.
Well, you know what I think? I think one of the things you said that I really liked, before in one of the other shows about Larry Holmes is that maybe at times he was so much better than his competition that he could be a little bit like Mercer and not quite be as strong. And what got him geared up is when he got hit, when he was in trouble. And then all of a sudden, Larry Holmes was figuring out all the tools that are in a boxing ring that it doesn't look like there's that many tools, but he is. He's figuring out the ropes, he's figuring out the distance, he's got the canvas, he's got the referee. He's using everything he's got, and he sees a lot of things that Mercer doesn't see that's inside the ring, and that Holmes, when he's in trouble a little bit, all of a sudden turns into a different fighter, a better fighter.
Yeah. And when you look at this, though, I mean, that's the thing that got me. Even Larry holding on to the ropes and punching him, and the referee did absolutely nothing about it.
No, and that's what Larry Holmes gets, like a Muhammad Ali got sometimes. He got that because he was Larry Holmes. He would not have got that if he was somebody else. And I guess it's okay. And one of the things Holmes also did is he liked to try to hang out on his corner. So when the round ended, Tommy Morrison always said, we don't get a minute between rounds, we get 50 seconds. And Holmes was trying to get 52 seconds and give his opponent 48 seconds. Holmes is looking for every little edge. And certainly, again, he's seeing things, he's seeing extra tools in the ring that the rest of us really don't see. We just see, a couple of guys, a rope and a canvas, and Holmes is seeing all kinds of little things that give him advantages.
Yeah, he's smart as hell. And I mean, to me, this is one of Larry's more impressive fights just because he's fighting a young lion who's coming off a huge win. The guy's strong as hell. And Larry is well past his prime. I mean, to me, Larry Holmes' prime probably ended right around the Jerry Cooney fight, which was a decade before this.
I agree that his prime ended while he was in the middle of his heavyweight championship run, and that probably the most impressive win that I can think of is this one when by the time he lost his championship, he had 2 more times to fight for it. I believe this is the most impressive performance because he is looking like he's giving a learning experience, even though he's acting sometimes a little cuckoo. I'm not Tommy Morrison, and then that war cry. I don't know what he's doing, but that's Larry Holmes is talking back to Mercer in his own way, and psychologically, he really is trying to get into Mercer's head, and it's wherever he's got, and it's working.
Yeah, he's renting an apartment right now in between those ears on Ray Mercer. And I mean, the thing about Larry, though, is he got the shot against Holyfield after this. I mean, he put up a good fight. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but and then he got the shot against.
But you know what? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say the disappointing part about this is what I think where Mercer sometimes when he lets down for an opponent is he lets down other people too. Because Evander Holyfield was a superstar until he hit the heavyweight level, and then he's no Mike Tyson. So even when he became champion, he fought for him, and now he's fighting Holmes, even though he was supposed to fight Mercer, which would have been an undefeated Mercer in a great fight, undefeated Holyfield, but instead he had to take on the winner, which was Holmes, and then Holyfield gets accused of only fighting old guys. So in a way, Holyfield redeemed that reputation, but eventually Mercer would hurt other people's reputations, including Riddick Bowe, by when he didn't quite get ready for somebody. Jesse Ferguson almost got thrown in prison for 7 years because of Mercer. Mercer, when he doesn't get ready for somebody quite right, he doesn't just affect himself, he affects other people.
Yeah, but the thing is this, I think that even if he was perfectly ready, I think Larry beats him. I just think the styles here make it difficult on him. And he may have been a little overweight. He may have taken him a little bit lightly. But still, this is a young guy in his prime against an old dude that just knows more than what he does. And that old dude, taught him a lot of lessons that night.
Yeah, and it would have been, yeah, exactly. And also, Holmes' whole life was being a boxer, while Mercer, entered it, relatively late. So it's hard to know what's going on. Holmes has a lot of things going on with him psychologically too. So again, Holmes is always at his best when he was in trouble.
Yeah, and then Mercer beats the guys like Mike Dixon, guys like that, to get back on, I guess you could call it, track. And then he steps up against Jesse Ferguson. Now, Jesse Ferguson was a guy who was kind of
sparring partner.
He was, I don't know. I think Jesse was better than that.
No, I think
Jesse has some good
that's
wins.
exactly what his job was at that point. He was better than that.
And
had hopes at one time, but he was at one time like 13, 14-0, and now he's 18-9, and he'd set himself up as somebody. That was his job, essentially, was to give him kind of things that Riddick Bowe is going to give him, because now it's going to be Mercer against Riddick Bowe for the championship, a good one. And Jesse Ferguson's supposed to show him, you're going to get Riddick Bowe's jab, but hey, look, this is some other things Riddick Bowe might give you. And he's supposed to be trying to help Mercer and lose the fight. Mercer's just giving him an island as far as hitting the body and coming out hard with that jab. So Ferguson's blocking it. Ferguson's not supposed to win this fight. He knows he's going to actually hurt himself in his job as a great sparring partner at this point. It's not putting him down. It's just what he decided he was.
Yeah, but the thing amazing about Jesse Ferguson is this was like 6 or 7 years after the Mike Tyson uppercut on ABC, if you remember, where Tyson talked about how he always wanted to drive somebody's nose through their brain or some crap. And Jesse Ferguson's still here. He gets the win in this fight. I know it's tainted, but it's not tainted by Ferguson.
No,
it was tainted by what Ray Mercer did.
Right, and Ferguson, at the time he fought Tyson, had only one loss. He still had hopes and stuff, and he lasted longer than anybody had lasted against Tyson to the sixth round.
I think it was
disqualified. Yeah. He wasn't knocked out. He's disqualified for holding, because that was one of the things he was trying to do. He beat Douglas, Buster Douglas, even though I thought Douglas won the fight, because Jesse Ferguson would go after a person's strength and think, I got to do something against it. Ferguson's a clever guy, and really he's not being unbelievably clever with Mercer. He's just supposed to be showing what Riddick Bowe might do and landing body punches, which Damiano did not do. And Mercer doesn't realize when a guy's landing body punches at you, you're going to start to lose your power. You're going to have problems, and you're going to get tired. You're not going to have any power at a certain point. At this point, Mercer's never faced something like that, because a lot of boxers, Roberto Duran gets furious at boxers today, says they don't use the body. And Foreman says, well, we don't use the body because it hurts. It looks like it hurts your hands. If you hit somebody's elbow, it really hurts. But Ferguson's doing what he's supposed to do to help Mercer against Riddick Bowe, and instead Ferguson's getting disgusted. He's going, I'm fighting a guy who thinks he's heavyweight champion. This guy can't box.
Yeah, and Ferguson, this first round's impressive by Ferguson.
Oh, absolutely. He's really, in a sense, it looked at the body. I mean, I just love the fact that he's landing the body and just blocking Mercer's jabs. And then eventually, as the thing's moving along, he's going to start winning every round. Just kind of what Mercer's giving him, he just takes it. And Mercer doesn't realize you can lose your power, because he didn't lose it against Damiano. He's never lost his power. He didn't lose it. He got tired against Holmes. He didn't lose his power. And that if you keep getting hit to the body, it accumulates. And he didn't know that before. And Jesse Ferguson, I'm just so glad we get to see him doing great, because Jesse Ferguson is a really clever guy. It's just he finally accepted the fact, in a sense, that he thought he was a professional sparring partner, although this fight's going to elevate him to fight Riddick Bowe, which, in a sense, I'm not sure he wanted himself. I think he was out of his league in mind when that happened. This whole fight was out of Jesse Ferguson's mind. He had no idea law enforcement's going to tell him, we're thinking about mug shots and fingerprinting you and facing a judge and 7 years in prison. And Jesse Ferguson, what the fuck? What'd I do? I'm just fighting the guy. I'm just a sparring partner against somebody who's going to get tired and hurt and offer me $100,000 to get drive.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what round we're in here. I was trying to get this. This is 7th. Can you tell just by watching? Because no round came up on this.
Yeah, you know, it could be because Mercer's not fighting back. Mercer's tired, and he's gonna. Now Mercer always talks to his opponent, but yes, I think it is because Mercer's gonna start talking to his opponent. You think, you know, he's not talking this, you know, tough talk. It looks like he looks like he's talking to him in a weird way that he might be asking him. I mean, you can see us on live TV. He might be asking him to take a bribe, which, you know, seemed crazy that you would do that in front of everybody. But it really looked like that's what he might be doing, and it turns out that's exactly what he was going to end up doing because now he's blowing it. And Rock Newman, Beau's manager's in there screaming like fucking hell. You know, hey, you're losing the fight, you're losing everything, and it hurts Riddick Beau. Riddick Beau's an undefeated champion. And we want to see him fight a Ray Mercer, you know, with one loss, and all of a sudden, if he fights the winner, it'll be Jesse Ferguson, a guy with like an 18-10 record or something like that, or 19-9.
Yeah, but let's face it. With Rock Newman, you had the Michael Dokes and the Jesse Ferguson thing. I think both of those fights were money grabs because we all know Riddick Beau didn't always show up in shape, which is how he lost his title to Evander Holyfield in his third defense.
Yeah, and look just how impressed. Look how easily Jesse Ferguson's dominating Ray Mercer, and here we are thinking Ray Mercer's going to be fighting Riddick Beau, the undefeated Riddick Beau, for the heavyweight championship, and all of a sudden Ray Mercer. We thought maybe the Holmes thing was a fluke, maybe he just didn't prepare for Holmes, or you know, just wasn't ready. But this doesn't look like a fluke. This looks like, you know, he's really getting dominated. Now we have no idea a bribe's going to take place, and Jesse Ferguson has no idea he might go to prison. Because he thinks, what the hell did I do? He offered me a bribe. I said, no, what the fuck do you want out of me? But apparently, if somebody offers you a bribe in the boxing ring, you have to report to law enforcement or it's a crime.
Are you supposed to report it right when it happens?
I don't know. What saved him, the district attorney's office decided after threatening him a lot, is that after the ring, after the round, Ferguson will tell his corner right away, he offered me a bribe, and he looks upset and stuff, so that they felt that maybe, you know, ignorance of the law is no excuse, but that maybe Ferguson did try to say something he didn't know they had to tell law enforcement. You know, nobody tells you that. You know, the boxing referee gives you the rules before the fight. They don't tell you that. If somebody offers you a bribe, make sure you contact the FBI afterwards. You know, he told Jesse Ferguson. The only thing is they threatened him with prison. He got scared to death. They threatened Mercer with prison. And he said, fuck off. Quit bothering me.
Well, that's Ray Mercer.
That's Mercer. Mercer's like, get me to Holyfield. What is all this bullshit boxers? You know, when am I going to finally fight the best? You know, I want to fight the best, and I'm tired of this. You're giving me these Jesse Fergusons and all these other people. I want to fight the best. You know, I want to know what it feels like. I know I'm getting my ass kicked. I know that.
You know, the thing that got me in the first fight was the fact that one of the judges, Don Nodecker, had it 96-94. I mean, to me, Steve Weisfeld's the only only judge who got it right. He had it 99-91 because I think Ferguson.
There's a real shady stuff in the second fight. They gave Mercer a decision and stuff like that. It was ridiculous. And then he's going to fight. What's his name? The draw fighter. I'm so sorry. I forget. Marion Wilson. Marion Wilson dominated. Won all 10 rounds, and they gave Mercer a draw. There's a lot of shady stuff that was helping Mercer. And the fact is, probably when all's said and done, and I like Ray Mercer a lot, he probably should have been thrown in jail for about 30 days. He's not a career criminal or anything, but there's something really wrong going on with boxing. And Jesse Ferguson didn't do anything wrong other than it all went crazy on him. And he got knocked out in the second round by Riddick Beau. He looked like he knew he was going to get knocked out. He looked like he had no business being there. And then really gave Mercer, when they fought the rematch, the last 3 rounds, be close to a dive in a sense that I think Ferguson wanted out. That he's been threatened with prison. He knows he's not heavy. Hey, look, I'm good at what I do, but get me out of this mess that Mercer's put me in.
Yeah, and then you had a rematch a few months later where Mercer does win, but it's by a split decision, very close fight.
I thought Ferguson won the fight, and Ferguson gave up the last 3 rounds. It's ridiculous. And then again, he fought Marion Wilson.
You think maybe they paid him off to give up the last 3 rounds?
No. I think, especially seeing Ferguson fight Beau and get knocked out in the second round. I think Ferguson. There's certain people that don't really want to be in the limelight at that kind of level, and I think Ferguson the bigger the start, the bigger the spotlight. Ferguson really didn't like that kind of attention and stuff. I'm sure when he fought Beau the first time, he got a really good decent paycheck. Friends, family, people he didn't know, people with pity stories, probably everybody grabbed that money out of Jesse Ferguson. He seems like a really nice, soft-spoken guy who's a sucker for anyone with a sad story.
Well, yeah.
And he hits hard. And a good boxer, if you underestimate him.
And then you had the Marion Wilson fight, which you talked about, which the ESPN guys from watching that all had him winning also. Had Marion Wilson winning.
Wilson all 10 rounds. And Marion Wilson had won something like 8 out of 18 fights. How bad it is. And Mercer really has no apologies about it. He says, no, I didn't care. I didn't try against Ferguson. I didn't try against Holmes. I didn't try against Wilson. I don't care how they rule it. I mean, he's really honest and brutal in his own way because I want to fight Holyfield. I know this guy can kick my ass, and I can't get up. I can't get geared up until I fight the best. And now I'm fighting the best. And not only fighting the best, he's beating the best. Evander Holyfield now is, two-time champion, but he's lost that, heart problems, and we're wondering about Holyfield. I was rooting for Holyfield. I like them both. I just thought Holyfield's career might be over, and it looks like he's going to lose this fight. I think it's the 8th round, and Mercer's winning, and Holyfield has a cut over his eye that's going to start bleeding into his eye, and it's going to start looking very much in this round that Mercer's got Holyfield in trouble. Serious trouble, and I felt so sad for Holyfield. I didn't quite know it was going to be the amazing fight that it was. It was already a great fight, and it was going to turn into an amazing fight.
Yeah, damn good fight, but how many Evander Holyfield fights don't turn out to be amazing fights?
Yeah, really. I mean, Evander Holyfield is the star of is it ESPN or HBO, whoever thinks that when they show these repeats, it's amazing how many great fights Evander Holyfield had, throughout his career. And I'm just glad that it redeemed Mercer quite a bit because, taking a bribe or something like that could really destroy anybody's credibility, career, anything. But honestly, for whatever reason, we all forgave Ray Mercer. We just, we forgave him because he put up such a great fight against Holyfield. This really felt like a championship fight, and he's really got Holyfield in trouble. And this is what he wanted. Mercer wanted the best, and now he's facing what he felt was a guy who was better than him, and that's what brought Ray Mercer, the sergeant in the army, of I'm going to take on whoever. I'm going to take on the fucking Afghanistan, the whoever, Al Qaeda, whoever. Mercer's ready to go when it's the best. When you're supposed to be fear induced, that's when Mercer wanted to go. Now they're ready to stop the fight because Holyfield's in trouble. He's bleeding into his eye. He's got a cut over his eye, and Mercer looks like there's 2 rounds to go. Mercer looks like he's leading this round, and now Holyfield looks like, at best, if he doesn't knock down Mercer's never been down. Holyfield would be lucky to get out of this with a draw. He's in really serious trouble. They might stop it, and if they don't stop it, unless Mercer collapses, it really looks like Mercer's winning the fight. I remember at this point just thinking, oh, it's so sad because I like Mercer, but it's just so sad for Evander Holyfield that it has to end this way.
Yeah, because remember, this was Mercer in 1995. This was considered his comeback fight from the issues he had against Michael Moore.
And comeback for Holyfield, too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Holyfield had the heart troubles and stuff with Holyfield, which were he was legitimately having health problems in the ring against Michael Moore and eventually against Riddick Beau in their third encounter. So there's nothing fake about these health problems Holyfield's having. What it was, we weren't sure because we kept being told it was this and that. They kept saying it was heart problems, and Holyfield said God was curing them. And we had no idea what was happening with Holyfield other than all of a sudden out of nowhere, first time Mercer's down. Holyfield's turned the whole round around. All of a sudden, it looks like Holyfield might win the round. It might be a 10-8 round. And from Holyfield having almost no chance of winning the fight in just about 40 seconds, he looks like he's going to be leading going into round 9. And it was going to be a great round 9 and 10. Also, it was just crazy how Holyfield turned it around.
Yeah, but it's not crazy when you consider we saw him do that repeatedly during his career.
Absolutely. And then at this point, it was just an extremely exciting fight because you knew it was tight and close and that Mercer could pull it out or Holyfield, still had the eye problem. It was just a tremendous heavyweight fight in the history of heavyweight fights. It really came at a great time. I think really now we could use a great heavyweight fight, just a really great heavyweight fight. And I'm not sure we're going to get one for a while, but this is one that we hoped it would be great. We weren't sure what.
How about this, Chris? Chris,
yeah.
We may get one, but it's not going to be at the quality of fighters that these two guys were. I mean, it wasn't just a great action fight. When you watch these guys defensively, when you watch them throw the jab, when you watch them throw combinations, most of the guys we get today are one punch at a time. They don't go to the body. These guys were complete fighters. They were tough men who could overcome things not going their way.
Absolutely, Evander Holyfield, you're right, is the king of that. When you think he's down, he really does always have something else in him. And Ray Mercer turns out to be a more unpredictable type of person than we knew. So after this fight, lots of people have to face Lennox Lewis. Rarely does somebody say, I want to fight the best, and the other person that was considered the best in the background was Lennox Lewis, had only been knocked out by Oliver McCall. But that's what geared up Mercer. So you didn't quite know what you're going to get in this guy who might not be so great against the guys that aren't so good, or not so good, but the guys that are just maybe second tier. How about that? And then would really be geared up against the best, because that's what motivated him. I don't even think it was money. I'm not even sure he wanted to win the championship. He just wanted the best competition he could have, because that's what got him going. And the other thing that got him going was fishing. And sometimes he said fishing was more interesting than boxing, because boxing sometimes didn't feel competitive to him. But this was competitive. Fighting Evander Holyfield for him was competitive. He was really disappointed he lost. I thought Holyfield won the fight. I'm sorry, Mercer. I thought you gave a great fight. I think Holyfield picked it up that extra notch that you do. And again, Mercer's first time down on canvas.
Yeah, and it's still, we got to do a show on Holyfield at one point, but I'm afraid it'll turn into Roots. It'd be over 7 different shows, lasting 2 hours each.
Absolutely. We really have no choice. There's so many great Holyfield fights that we almost have to always pick Holyfield versus someone and only show like against somebody, or maybe a certain part of his life or something. But you're right. There's just too many great fights in the end on Holyfield.
That's a nice tackle by Mercer right there.
There he goes. That's an Army versus Navy. But again, Mercer is a competitive guy, and he really badly wants to be Holyfield. It's just, this isn't going to be the Ray Mercer you're going to get every time, and that's Ray Mercer. You have to accept sometimes that boxers aren't who we hope they are. They're who they are. And Mercer honestly was honest about who he was. He said, I don't try against certain guys, and then I get really geared up when I think somebody might beat my ass, which that's, that there's really something to that in some way, and maybe the Army trained him in some way to be that way. I don't know. He's not eccentric, but he does beat to his own drum.
Yeah, and I would have loved to seen this Mercer fight that version of Mike Tyson, because I think that would have put Mercer over the top, because I think Mercer would have beat him.
Mercer would have been one of the few people who would not have been afraid of Tyson and would have definitely geared up for Tyson. That we would have known. I don't want to put down the undefeated Mike Tyson and underestimate his chances, but he would have fought a Ray Mercer who wasn't afraid of him, and he would have fought a Ray Mercer who was ready for him. And if nothing else, that's the best Ray Mercer. And again, he's a character in a certain sense. Because now when I can get Lennox Lewis, well, a lot of people have to face Lennox Lewis. Rarely does somebody say, I really want to fight Lennox Lewis. I want to fight Lennox Lewis. I want to fight the best. And also thinks, I'm going to fight him with a jab, even though he's smaller than Lewis. And you think that's not really how you fight Lennox Lewis. But Mercer doesn't care. He figures he's going to go at him with power, and most people don't go after Lewis with power. And most people think he won the first 3 rounds. I'm not sure. It's close. I think he's got an edge going into the 4th round, but he's certainly giving Lewis more problems by just attacking him, because he wants to fight Lennox Lewis. He's excited by the idea of fighting Lennox Lewis. It's not just not afraid. He's excited fighting Lennox Lewis. And there's a crowd chanting USA, USA. And I don't usually get that unbelievably patriotic, but I was kind of excited seeing the American crowd and that Mercer, who I didn't realize just how excited he'd be, going against what he thought was the best. If Lennox Lewis won the best, it wouldn't mean nothing to Mercer. And then Lennox Lewis just isn't used to somebody coming at him with power like that.
Yeah, and I had Mercer winning this fight by a point.
I think a lot of people do.
I think it's a toss-up. I think it could have went either way. It's not a robbery, nothing like that. But I really thought when I watched it,
Mercer, if it turned into an even fight, it was very close to an even fight, it was going to go Lewis's way. Mercer had to do a little bit more than that. But I do think that that Mercer Lewis is closer than I think Mercer, Holyfield, right? Really do think Holyfield got the edge on him, but I think Mercer really showed himself. And even though he lost the fights with Holyfield and Lewis, he redeemed his reputation completely. In fact, you almost never hear anything about, though he wasn't going to get charged with a crime, a bribery, and eventually, again, Ferguson was going to be off the hook. Mercer didn't care about that. He really didn't. He just didn't care. All he really cared about was, quit bothering me and put me up against the best. And so for him, he really did show himself that to not only fight Lennox Lewis, but to really be excited fighting Lennox Lewis. That is something that few of us in our heads will ever understand or know what that's like. And look at that. He's just pounding away on Lewis. It's just, it's incredible. We'll never know what's going on in Ray Mercer's head. It's the same guy that didn't fight well against Holmes, that offered a bribe. It was an athlete that was amazing to the military. And really, in Lennox Lewis, he wants to show him his power. And Lennox Lewis just isn't used to somebody saying, I'm smaller than him, saying, I'm going to give you my power and let you deal with it.
Yeah, but Lennox Lewis did deal with it.
Yeah, he did. Well, he had a few boxing shots that he had in the end. Look at the referee grabbed Lewis, because I think Lewis all of a sudden was realizing, this is a much more competitive fight than he thought. And I don't think he really thought in a million years Mercer was going to absolutely keep jabbing with him. Being smaller and being so successful with the jab. Lewis did have a lot of problems with Mercer, and again, we have to be Americans and sort of fair. We think we're fair.
Hey, there you go.
Reasonable thing. Mercer might have won this fight, but it was close. It's not a robbery to give it to Lewis, but it was a very close fight.
After what I just saw, there's no doubt that Mercer won, because Harold Letterman had Lewis up by a point going into the 10th round, and Harold Letterman was hardly ever right.
There you go. And yeah, it certainly felt like, hey, this could go either way in the 10th round, and could either one of them take it. And again, Mercer doesn't do anything to let down. He really was the best against the best. I was trying to think of there's probably other sports teams that are like that, or athletes that they do well against the best, but they just don't do quite as well against well,
I think the term is played down to the level of their competition. I think we see it in all sports. There's cases of it all over the place where teams play down to the level of their competition.
Absolutely. And that's a big mistake, because when you play down to the level of Larry Holmes, you're making a big mistake, because Holmes is not someone you play down to. Holmes is above that. So when you're playing down to him, he's above you. He's going to beat you. So you're right. He's got to be careful when he's playing down. Or Jesse Ferguson, I'm just taking on a professional sparring partner, preparing me for Beau, and you're really underestimating the talent of a Marion Wilson or a Jesse Ferguson or a Burt Cooper. These guys sometimes in their second tier a little bit, they're not really given the appreciation of just how great of boxers they are as heavyweights.
So let me ask you this, Chris. Then in the end, when we look at the totality of Ray Mercer's career, we would say he came up just short of Holyfield and Lewis. And the reason I would say he came up just short is because Holyfield and Lewis were not guys that ever took anybody lightly. And I think Holyfield and Lewis were both guys that worked so hard. They always got the most out of their ability. With Ray Mercer, what I see is a guy that, he's on the high school football team or the high school basketball team, and he averages 30 points a game, and he plays really hard during games.
Yeah.
But he doesn't practice hard. And what happens is 2 years later, the guy that was the second best player on the team comes back. He's a sophomore at college. He's playing college basketball. And he goes to the drive-through window at Wendy's, and the guy that averaged 30 a game but wasn't a good practice player is the one taking his order.
Well, you're definitely the football coach, and you're right. And I played padded football and stuff like that. It's easy to get geared up for the game. It's not so easy to get geared up for practice. And at the same time, how well you do in practice can define how well you do in the games. And you're right. Ray Mercer wanted to play the game and wasn't terribly interested in practice. He wanted to fight Holyfield and Lewis without dealing with the rest of these guys. And I think Lewis was a little underestimated Mercer, because he'd also fought Tommy Morrison just before, and they had kind of a similar reputation. And he handled Tommy Morrison. He was really prepared against Tommy Morrison, but he handled him fairly easily. He maybe thought it was going to be something similar. And Mercer and Morrison, whatever the similarities, they're also not the same guy. Mercer really came out Lewis, and Lewis, it took a long time to really get geared up and start landing some combinations and stuff. And absolutely, if people think Mercer won the fight, that's not unreasonable. It's not absolutely unreasonable to give Lewis the fight either. It's just it was a close fight, and really impressive for Mercer, who now has totally redeemed his reputation, although he hasn't won a fight in 3 years. That's just crazy. Without winning a fight is how he redeemed his reputation. And when he had this undefeated record, he wasn't as renowned.
Yeah, and then next up, third straight fight. He's on the big show. He's on HBO again, and he's fighting terrible Tim Witherspoon, who, always seemed to come up a little short, whether it was Larry Holmes or whatever. This is 1996, though. It's 7 months after the Lennox Lewis fight, and he gets the win. He gets the win, but this fight, number one, the thing that struck me was the judges. Paul Venti, 97-91.
I totally disagree. I think this is one of the fights that I think could have turned out. I hate draws. I think this one could have turned out in a draw. These were two guys landing bombs who were standing in the ring against each other, and it turned out to kind of be the last big one for both of them. And almost the crazy thing is, it's getting near the end of American dominance of 100 years. After this fight, Riddick Bowe's going to get knocked down 2 times. Tyson's in prison. Holyfield's going to be the champion for a little bit, and Lennox Lewis is looming. We don't quite realize it, but American dominance of 100 years is coming near an end. These two guys, this was a terrific fight.
I think the end of that dominance was when Evander Holyfield lost to Lennox Lewis the second time, which would have been, 99, 2000. And you remember, this is 1996. So Tyson had been out of jail for 3 years, and Tyson was actually a trinket holder about this time. I think this is what?
Yeah, I think Holyfield, didn't Holyfield
This is right around the time.
Tyson and win?
Yeah, it's about the same time. What was the date on the Witherspoon? Because it seems to me like it was November or December. Yeah, it was December 14th.
I just think it was coming somewhere near an end because I thought Lennox Lewis was looming.
It would have been
Tyson Holyfield.
It would have been a month after Tyson Holyfield. I believe Tyson Holyfield one was in 96, but I'm not.
Yeah, I thought it was before. And again, Holyfield's knocked Tyson down. He's the king of the crowd, and Lennox Lewis is looming. And Riddick Bowe's going to fight after this, get knocked down twice, and retire. He's going to win against Gallardo. It's a disqualification. It just meant the American heavyweight division was coming somewhat to an end, and for these two guys, it was a tremendous fight. But for both of them, this is probably the climax of their careers. For Tim Witherspoon, we're going to do him again. Is he a 2-time champion or a 0-time champion? And Don King and Mark King, the son, we got a lot of bad things to say about them whenever we do that show.
Well, that's almost any show we do boxing-wise. You can say something bad about Don King and his son Carl. There's nothing good to say.
I can't remember. I remember, though, you convinced me once that if we were his kids, we'd become evil, too. He'd give us $250,000 and we'd go, Dad!
Well, I mean, he's just evil. And
yeah.
Hey, how about this? Did you know this? Tim Witherspoon in 1999 lost to Brian Nielsen in Copenhagen.
No, I didn't remember that. I just remember that Witherspoon and now, at this point, had gone something like 5 or 6 years without losing a fight, without even noticing, because he wasn't fighting that often.
Well, see, the thing about Witherspoon is after this fight, he didn't really win any more fights, but I think what it was is he beat Levi Billups, who was a fringe contender for a while. I remember watching that on Tuesday Night Fights. Then he lost the unanimous decision to Larry Donald, I think Jimmy Thunder. He lost the decision in Poland to
a little bit. Like I thought for both of them,
he fought everybody. He fought everybody, and he gave everybody trouble. But I think he should have won this fight. The last really decent wins or surprise wins I remember with him would have been, do you remember the Cuban? I think his name was like Alicio Castillo.
Yeah, that was the fight before this. This is where Witherspoon got his big win.
The Castillo fight. The Castillo fight was in 2001.
Oh, was it? Oh, I thought he had.
Yeah, it was 5 years after that. And then he almost upset Monty Barrett in 2001 on HBO. Split decision. I thought he won. And then he had a win over Ahmed Abdeen, which, if you remember, that was one of the guys Tuesday Night Fights who, never was. I mean, he was a journeyman. And then I think the last fight I remember against a name fighter is, I believe, Lou Savarese stopped him in like 2002.
Yeah, I just thought that with this fight, it was a good fight. I really would have been okay with the draw. I really do think, though, that possibly Mercer had an advantage with everyone because people were sympathetic that he lost to Lewis and Holyfield after giving such tremendous performances. That did put a lot of favor on Mercer's side, who hadn't won a fight, although having these quality
How
fights.
about this though? The other thing is this, and you talked about it when Mercer's fighting, and everybody's chest starts chanting USA in 1996, coming off back-to-back tough, close decision losses to probably the two best heavyweights at that time. Don't you think that the name of Ray Mercer is much better for a promoter to sell than the name of Tim Witherspoon?
Oh, absolutely. Don King would say that too. His bad mouthing at Tim Witherspoon is that I couldn't get his family members to watch one of his fights. He really felt that Tim Witherspoon brought nothing to the table as far as an audience. And Ray Mercer, people liked him. He always liked him. He always had the crowd on his side, even with the bride, which clearly he did. And I actually do think, since he showed no remorse, he put Jesse Ferguson in a lot of trouble. I really do think 30 days in jail or something should have happened. But because people think, well, he was humiliated and wasn't that enough, he didn't care. All he cared about was what this competition thing, what was going on in his head. He liked that the public liked him, but he was a sportsman at heart, and he was perfectly content going fishing with his buddy, as opposed to a bunch of people watching him win a boxing bout.
Yeah, then he wins 6 or 7 non-decision fights, and knocks a couple guys out of the ring. But
knocks him out of the ring to win the fight. I mean, that's impressive. It reminds you that when you see these guys with great records who apparently have won in Europe championships, they're not at the level of Jesse Ferguson. You see Jesse Ferguson's record, you see these guys with these fantastic records and think, well, Jesse Ferguson is not that good. Jesse Ferguson can beat all these guys who won all these European championships despite his record and the record of these guys winning from Luxembourg or something.
Yeah, and then he gets his final shot at glory, 2002 against Vladimir Klitschko, Atlantic City, the Taj Mahal Hotel and Casino. I believe that was an HBO Boxing After Dark one. And actually, he gets stopped in the 6th round. He did bust up with that jab. He did bust up Klitschko's face a little bit. He put up a better fight than most guys did against Klitschko.
He went down in the 1st round. The first time he's ever stopped in the 6th round. But for nobody to feel sorry for Ray Mercer, because Ray Mercer wanted to fight the best. And to fight Vladimir Klitschko, especially as Mercer's been aging, he was already old to even start out as a rookie as a professional boxer. That's typical Mercer. And unfortunately, he's facing just, and he's okay about it. The guy kicked my ass. I wanted to find out. And not too many people want to, when you see how big Vladimir Klitschko is and his boxing skills, I can't imagine too many people say, I want to fight this person to know what it's like. And I don't care if he beats me. I don't care what people think. I want to know what it's like. And Vladimir Klitschko was in his head thinking he was going to fight Lennox Lewis, and that wasn't going to happen. Lennox was going to retire after fighting the better brother, Vitaly. I think Vitaly's one of the greatest of all time. But yeah, Vladimir Klitschko got the best of Mercer. People don't have to feel sorry for Mercer. Mercer wanted to do it. He wanted to fight the best. He cared about the outcome, but he really wanted to know in himself, am I afraid of somebody, or can I fight my fears? And maybe that's what's so great about Ray Mercer, even if he let down against certain people, because all of us get scared maybe of fighting somebody when we're younger, somebody we still think, I should have fought that person when I didn't. And Ray Mercer doesn't have that regrets. He fought the best. And he fought his best when he fought the best.
All right, Chris, we are done for another week. Any ideas on who you want to do next?
Well, I was thinking we could possibly do Witherspoon, or I was thinking of two athletes who Black America thought, in my lifetime, were really overrated because they were white, and one was dead and one was alive. One's Larry Bird. We don't do basketball, but I thought maybe Rocky Marciano. So I give you a choice: Tim Witherspoon or Rocky Marciano.
Well, where I'm going there. We're going Rocky Marciano.
Absolutely, let's do it. Was he over? When we know he's going to win all his fights, and I think it's impressive. One thing when we're going to do Amar Hansen, the only problem is visually it doesn't look that exciting. Rocky Marciano is older than that, and his fights are exciting. It's still good visually.
All right, when do you want to do it, Chris?
Let's see. What is today? Today's in the middle of the week. Well, when Sunday nights, I don't know if we can do it in 4 days or 10 days. We want to do a good show, so that's why we have to go over the rounds, go over everything, because we just want the audience to visually.
You want us to go a week from Sunday?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, just for the audience, we want it to be the best.
All right, so a week from Sunday, we will be back with the Old Time Boxing Show, looking back at the career of Rocky Marciano. Was he overrated? But for now, you can follow me on Twitter at Grueling Truth. Make sure you go check out all of Christopher Shelton's articles on the Grueling Truth. Go follow us on Facebook for all of our shows. And remember, tomorrow, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, the Inside Boxing Weekly Show, myself and John Raspani, as we look back at last week's fight, look at the comeback of, Daniel Dubois. Damn. I can't remember the new guys, but I can remember all kind of things about Jesse Ferguson, Chris. But for now, until then, I'm Mike Goodpastor. That's Christopher Shelton. You've been watching and listening to The Grueling Truth.